Hello and welcome to Newsweek South Asia, your one-stop destination for in-depth analysis of security challenges, regional conflicts and the evolving threat of terrorism. Let's take a look at the headlines first. 26/11 accused Tahawwur Rana extradited to India to face justice. Counter-terror operation continues in Jammu and Kashmir. And Pakistan expels thousands of Afghan refugees amid global outcry. More than 15 years after the deadly 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, India has achieved a significant breakthrough. Tahawwur Rana, a key accused and long-time associate of Lashkar-e-Taiba operative David Headley, has been finally extradited from the United States. The Pakistani origin Canadian businessman is now on Indian soil to face justice. His return not only marks a major diplomatic triumph for New Delhi, but also reignites global scrutiny over Pakistan's entrenched support for cross-border terrorism. After years of legal hurdles and courtroom battles, Tahawwur Rana, a key accused in the 2008 Mumbai attacks, has finally been extradited to India from the United States. The Pakistani origin Canadian businessman arrives to face trial for his alleged role in one of the deadliest terror attacks on Indian soil. This comes after a prolonged legal battle in US courts, culminating in the Supreme Court denying his final plea to block the extradition. His extradition marks a critical step forward in India's pursuit of justice for the 166 innocent lives lost in the 26/11 carnage.
I think it's a very important development, and especially because it brings a closure to the families who were affected by the dastardly attack in Mumbai on 26/11. And to those hundreds of families who lost their loved ones or people who were injured, to them it brings a sense of closure. To the people of India, it brings a sense of closure because finally we feel that, okay, though delayed, justice will finally be done. And this person will be convicted by an Indian court and given Indian punishment. Now that is a very important message. And I think it will have psychological reverberations across the terrorist world. All these people who harbor terrorists and the terrorists themselves, especially the masterminds, they are getting the message that regardless of what you do, you will face justice at some point of time. And then once this message goes across to them, they will be very careful in carrying out further attacks. So I think it is very important messaging also which is going across to the world.
Earlier this year, during Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the US, President Trump approved the extradition of Tahawwur Rana to face justice in India.
My administration has approved the extradition of one of the plotters and one of the very evil people of the world, and having to do with the horrific 2008 Mumbai terrorist attack, to face justice in India.
Rana was earlier convicted in the US for his links to Lashkar-e-Taiba, the terror group that plotted and executed the attacks from Pakistan. A US court convicted him of helping plot an attack against a Danish newspaper that printed cartoons of Prophet Muhammad, but cleared him of the charge of planning the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. Although Rana was acquitted, the trial brought his close links with David Coleman Headley, also known as Daud Gilani, a Pakistani-American Lashkar-e-Taiba operative and one of the main conspirators behind the Mumbai attacks, into the public domain. Headley, who is serving a 35-year sentence in the United States, surveyed targets across Mumbai with Rana's logistical and financial support, posing as a businessman setting up a branch of his immigration consultancy. This cover allowed Headley to make multiple visits to India to scout targets like the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel, CST railway station and the Jewish Community Centre, Nariman House. Rana now faces trial under several sections of the Indian Penal Code, including criminal conspiracy, murder, waging war against India, and aiding terrorism.
He is accused of committing war against India. He is accused of committing murder in India. He is accused of committing forgery in India because he used his immigration business as a cover to give David Headley the visa papers and his travels, etc. So Headley, when he did reconnaissance of the hotel and locations, he did it on behalf of his company, showing as a business reason for his visit to India. So he's accused of forgery. And lastly, but not the least, he's accused of terrorism. So in all of these cases, Indian courts will try him.
The 26/11 Mumbai attacks remain one of the most horrific acts of terrorism in India's history. Over the course of 60 hours, 10 heavily armed terrorists from Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba targeted prominent locations in Mumbai. The attacks left 166 people dead and over 300 injured, sparking global outrage and exposing the scale of cross-border terror emanating from Pakistan. While the extradition of Tahawwur Rana marks a significant legal and diplomatic achievement for India, it also casts a renewed spotlight on Pakistan's continued support for terror networks. Despite global pressure, Islamabad has failed to dismantle Lashkar-e-Taiba. Its founder and the 26/11 mastermind, Hafiz Saeed, continues to live freely in Pakistan, despite being sanctioned by the United Nations and the United States.
More than a decade after 26/11 in Mumbai,
India has consistently raised concerns over Pakistan's unwillingness to act against terror outfits operating from its soil. The extradition of Rana, who played a key role in enabling the Mumbai attacks, underscores the urgent need for international accountability. Let's now shift our focus to India's Jammu and Kashmir, once again facing the brunt of cross-border infiltration attempts. Terrorists from Pakistan are relentlessly trying to sneak in with arms and ammunition, aiming to carry out attacks and disrupt peace in the Union territory. In yet another chilling reminder of Pakistan's unending proxy war, a fierce encounter broke out in Udhampur district. Even as Indian security forces remain on high alert, Pakistan-backed terrorists continue their cowardly attempts to destabilize the region.
A tense calm blankets the dense jungles of Udhampur in Jammu and Kashmir just hours after a high-stakes encounter broke out between Indian security forces and a group of heavily armed terrorists. The gunfight, which lasted over 2 hours, marked the culmination of a 17-day-long intelligence-led tracking operation, following suspicious movements reported in the nearby Kathua district since March 24. Security forces in a well-coordinated joint operation swiftly retaliated to terrorist fire, managing to cordon off the jungle terrain and block all potential escape routes. Intelligence inputs suggest that 2 to 3 terrorists are still holed up in the thick foliage and combing operations are underway in full force.
काफ़ी दुर्गम इलाका है, ऊंचे पहाड़ और नीचे ऊंच नाला है और घने जंगल है इस इलाके में। तो इसी जंगल के बीच में 2 से 3 दहशतवादी छुपे होने की इतला है हमारे पास और इसी संदर्भ में जो है ये सर्च ऑपरेशन चल रहा है। जी नहीं, अभी सारी फोर्सेस के सारे जवान और सारे टीम मेंबर्स जो है बिल्कुल फिट एंड फाइन है और हमारा सारे फोर्सेस के साथ अच्छा कोऑर्डिनेशन चल रहा है। इलाका टफ है, डेंस है, अंधेरा भी हो रहा है, लेकिन फोर्सेस का मोराल हाई है और हमें उम्मीद है कि कामयाबी मिलेगी। शाम को लगभग 2 घंटों तक जो है हमें फायरिंग होती रही और जवाबी फायरिंग भी हम करते हैं।
This is not an isolated incident. Just hours after the Udhampur encounter, another gun battle erupted in Chhatru forest of Kishtwar, another district vulnerable to Pakistani infiltration due to its challenging geography. Back on March 23, local villagers in Sanyal, a mere 5 kilometers from the border, spotted 5 suspicious armed individuals, a chilling early sign of what would unfold. The Tahawwur district has now become the latest hotspot for Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, emerging as a launchpad for militants infiltrating through porous border gaps and moving towards Udhampur, Doda and Kishtwar, clearly with the intention to disrupt peace in the Kashmir Valley. In 2024 alone, Jammu witnessed a surge in terror incidents, resulting in 44 deaths, including 18 brave security personnel and 13 terrorists. While Islamabad continues to parrot denials of involvement, the reality on the ground tells a different story. Terror camps supplying militants with training, arms, and ideological indoctrination. This latest string of encounters underscores Pakistan's refusal to abandon its decades-old strategy of bleeding India by 1,000 cuts. Even as India works towards stability and peace, Pakistan's deep state remains fixated on exporting terrorism.
Pakistan does not like peace and tranquility in Jammu and Kashmir. They have already fought 4 wars, and after 90s, they have taken up this Operation Topak of planning by General Zia-ul-Haq, where it was the giving 1,000 cuts to India, and those 1,000 cuts were sending these jihadis and these terrorists into the Kashmir Valley to create mayhem. Now this also they have lost, because after Article 370 was abolished and abrogated, and Operation All Out conducted, people in the valley have realized that they were being made a fool of by the politicians from within also, and also Pakistan, the propaganda that was coming there. And that is why they came out in large numbers to vote. Now this, Pakistan is totally trying to do internationalization of this Kashmir issue through these terrorists, which they will not succeed.
With fresh infiltration attempts and gunfights intensifying, the Indian Army has ramped up counter-terror operations across the region, especially in heavily forested areas that provide cover to terrorist cells. But India remains unyielding. Despite Pakistan's destabilizing agenda, Indian forces are resolute in their mission to defend every inch of the nation. With the Udhampur encounter zone still under surveillance, security personnel remain on high alert, determined to neutralize the threat and prevent civilian casualties. As Pakistan-backed terror outfits continue their sinister pursuits, India sends a strong message: terror will be met with steel, and every act of violence will be countered with unmatched resolve.
Thousands of Afghan refugees once sheltered in Pakistan are now being forced out not only by official orders but through harsh and often brutal tactics by police and security forces. In what global rights groups are calling a deeply inhuman campaign, families are being evicted in the dead of night, detained without cause and torn apart. Islamabad claims the crackdown is rooted in national security concerns, but the result is mass displacement, broken homes, and an uncertain future for many who now face return to a fragile and Taliban-ruled Afghanistan.
In one of the largest and most aggressive deportation campaigns in recent history, thousands of Afghan refugees are being expelled from Pakistan under a government-led repatriation drive that has triggered international outrage. The Torkham and Spin Boldak border crossings have become choke points of despair, as families who had spent decades in Pakistan are now being forced to return to a homeland many barely recognize. Rights groups are calling it a humanitarian crisis. Refugees describe midnight raids, arbitrary arrest, extortion and abuse, often without warning, often without mercy.
موږ ډېر سخت بد چلند سره مخامخ شولو، شپې چاپې را باندې واچولې او دوه بچیان دې ما اوس هم په تاڼه کې هلته پاتې دي. او دا کارت هم دغه د ثبوت را سره پروت ده دا ګوره ګاډی مې بیا لوډ کړ بیا ورغلم دوباره تاڼې ته چې ګاډی مې لوډ کړی ده ویل چېرې روان یم افغانستان ته روان یم وایي زه افغانستان ته زه لاړ سره او زامن به دې شاته مونږ هغه پرچې پې کاټ شوي دي او دا به ریپورټ کړو او دا به شاته درپسې درولېږو چې هر څه وزر مرته کوو یې نه منم.
Pakistan's Interior Ministry had earlier set March 31st as the deadline for all undocumented Afghans and even Afghan citizen card holders to leave or face forced deportation. That warning has now turned into a swift and brutal action. Islamabad has justified this crackdown by linking Afghan refugees to rising militant attacks and security threats inside the country, a claim strongly denied by Kabul. So far, Pakistan has failed to provide any substantial evidence to support such sweeping allegations. Critics say that Pakistan is using Afghan refugees as scapegoats for its internal security failures instead of addressing the root causes of extremism with its own borders. Human Rights Watch and other international watchdogs have condemned what they call abusive tactics, including late-night raids, threats, extortion, and physical harassment.
एक दो महीने जड़े हो गए ना कभी दो डाले पुलिस होंदा ते नाल सिविल डिफेंस होंदा ते सानू ये रोटियां से पता ही नहीं लगा भाई किस टाइम से रोटी खाता है ते किस टाइम नहीं खाना ते 26 घंटे साडा बुए ते पुलिस होना ते ईद दी दिहाड़ी ते सानू इतना तंग कीता कि ईद दी नमाज से नहीं पढ़े ते यार 4 बजे तक मोला आखिरी टाइम दिता जड़ा सामान है वो आधा छाड़ दिता जड़ा पक्का हो गया 26 घंटे वेच वेक नहीं जाता ते जरा चीज है वो वेच चाट के ते आ गया.
Even Eid, a sacred occasion marked by peace and celebration, become a day of terror.
نو دا موږ پنجاب کې اوسېدل موږ د فوجیان به روزانه راتلل پوه شوې نو یو موږ سره پاکستاني کارډونه نه مهاجر کارډ را سره نو د اختر په لولنه ورځ باندې موږ راتویست تاسې وځئ نو دا سپیان ساتلی مې دی یو ګلډانګ دی یو جرمن شافرډ دی زه وایم چې دا سپیان سره پرېږدي د دې سره مینه دا یو دنه مې اخیستی ده پیسو باندې دا یو دنه مې ساتلی ده خو نېره سره پرېږدي نو په دې ډاګ کې پرېږدم سړی به خفه کېږي زه دا غوښتنه کوم چې دا سپیان سره پرېږدي.
According to the UN's International Organization for Migration, over 8 lakh Afghans, both undocumented migrants and ACC holders, have crossed back into Afghanistan, and this is only the beginning. The Taliban government has appealed for a humane, coordinated process, but Islamabad appears determined to offload its Afghan population regardless of the human toll.
اوس غوښتنه موږ دا لرو چې موږ راغلي سرپناه نه لرو جایداد نه لرو په دې باره کې موږ سره همکاري وکړي چې موږ ته یو سرپناه برابر شي یو جایداد برابر شي څه مځکې نمرې چېرته موږ ته راکړي په خپل ولایت کې نو ډېر مشکلات به سره اوس مخامخ یي.
For many of these refugees returning to Afghanistan, a country grappling with economic ruin and instability, means entering another phase of hardship. But between persecution in Pakistan and uncertainty back home, they had no choice. Since the start of Pakistan's repatriation campaign in 2023, more than 800,000 Afghans have been expelled. Yet Pakistan still hosts an estimated 2.8 million Afghan refugees, many of whom fled during the past decades of Soviet invasion, civil war, and Taliban repression. Among them are tens of thousands awaiting resettlement in the US and other Western nations following the collapse of the US-backed Afghan government in 2021. Pakistan's inhuman deportation drive has not only violated basic human rights, it has ripped families apart and inflicted deep psychological trauma on thousands who considered it a second home.
Let's now turn our attention to the expanding influence of China in South Asia. Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative was initially hailed as a path to economic development. But today, many South Asian nations are feeling the weight of dependence. From strategic ports in Sri Lanka to economic corridors in Pakistan, Beijing's presence in the region is growing, not just economically, but geopolitically. To understand what this expanding footprint means for the future of South Asia and the wider Indo-Pacific, we are joined by Bashir Naveed, an expert on South Asia affairs. Hello, sir. Welcome to Newsweek South Asia. Let me begin by asking you, projects like CPEC and Hambantota Port are often touted as development breakthroughs. But on the ground, do they reflect long-term cooperation or strategic leverage by Beijing?
Yes, of course. But after this Sri Lankan experiment, China is now I think, not interested in controlling the land over here, but it is controlling actually wanted to control the industries and the investment over here. And only that up to that Sri Lanka it has restricted itself. But in context of Pakistan, it is actually wanted not to control any land, but during the debt and loans, it wants to control some big industries in the area, and he can take over those industries because Pakistan is not able to pay back them the loans. So there are chances that China will take over the industries, many industries, particularly the electricity and other basic industries, into its control, rather than going to take over the Balochistan or Gwadar. That is not possible for it, but it will control through that industries to those areas where this belt road will go.
The term debt trap diplomacy has gained traction globally. Based on your observations, does this apply to how China is engaging with countries like Pakistan and Sri Lanka?
Yes, that trap is very strong one, and that really exists, and that's why actually China wanted to stop the other countries or the other powers to enter here. It wants to create some wall kind of thing against them, and it wants that all should be remain here and not take loans or debt from the other countries. It actually wanted to have its control over there, and no other, like Pakistan. Pakistan is playing with both China and America, and China wanted that it should not take more loans from America, but we will take from America. So they want that in his area of control, no other power should enter. So those remain outside the influence of China. That debt trap is being used for that interest. So this is a very dangerous thing in small countries like in Southeast China. They all are in the debt trap of China.
How do China's activities in countries like Pakistan and Sri Lanka align with its broader strategy of power projection across the Indian Ocean and Indo-Pacific?
Activities actually is increasing, increased by the China, and China has influence. And Pakistan and Sri Lanka cannot come out from the debt trap of China. It will remain. And that is that USA is trying to appease Pakistan and trying to take Pakistan control, but it's difficult to run away or to get out from the Chinese trap.
Specifically regarding Pakistan, with growing local resistance and attacks on Chinese personnel, do you think Beijing's gamble with CPEC is backfiring, or is it simply recalibrating its approach?
One can say that it is backfiring, that the CPEC cannot be completed, or it seems that it cannot be completed. The other factor is also the involvement of government of Pakistan. particularly the forces or you can say the military, that they don't want it to be completed. Looking at the resistance from the Balochistan or from other provinces, also from Sindh, there are some resistance movements in those areas. But the government of Pakistan is much interested to linger on this project to get the loans and debt from the China.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views and analysis of the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@anin.com. This is Shivangi Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire production team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.